diet to have healthy bones. I mean, especially women, older women, who try to go on these no-fat diets and they end up with osteoporosis because you need to have a certain amount of fat in your diet. I mean, you don't need to eat all fat, but it's really important to have high-quality fats and nice, good, not McDonald's fats, but olive oil and, you know, fresh nuts and things like this that really, and avocados. I mean, give yourself these healthy fats, very good for your bones. And, okay, so we have these types of bone, these are the cells that are in our bones. Osteogenic cells, they are bone stem cells. Then we have osteoblasts, which are forming of the cells. And then osteocytes, which is the mature the mature bone cell. And this is works in maintaining the bone tissue. And then we have osteoclasts, which are cells that destroy bone. So remember I said the bone is constantly being remodeled. Let me ask you, anyone here had braces? Anyone here? Okay, so do you know how that worked? Did your dentist ever talk to you about how that worked? Okay, so what they did is they pulled on your teeth. Do you remember? I mean, I had braces too, I remember. They're pulling on the tooth. So as they're pulling on the tooth, you're getting bone loss at this. So here's the, let me draw it because it's easy to describe it. So here's your tooth. And there's a brace around it. So it's got a brace around it, and it's being pulled in this direction, and it's anchored here in bone. So as it's being pulled this way, the bone on this side is being pulled away, is being destroyed by osteoclasts. So we have this osteoclast, osteoblast action, and I'm going to show you a film on it so you'll really get it clearly. But this is happening all the time. So we have osteoblasts that are forming bone, osteoclasts that are eating away bone. So as they're pulling on the tooth, the bone is being eaten away on this side, dissolving, and the bone is growing on this side. So then as you get more bone growth here and less bone growth here, then the tooth moves over. And that's how that works. So all they do is put this constant pressure on the tooth, and it kind of stimulates, like I said, weight bearing is the best thing for your bone. So they're pulling weight, and as they're pulling that weight on there, the bone is responding like it does. And so these are these 4 cells, and I'm going to show you this slide, and then I'll show you the film, because I want you to really maybe make a note, write these 4 cells down. So the first is the stem cell, osteogenic. So this is a stem cell that has been slated to become a bone cell. So it's not quite a anything goes stem cell. It's got a direction. And then we have the osteoblasts, which are forming these cells, the extracellular matrix around the bone. And then the osteoblasts, eventually, as they're secreting their salts and collagen and all of this stuff is being secreted from the cell, as that's happening, the cell actually begins to wall itself in. And you end up with this structure that looks like this. So the cell, so then the osteocyte, once the osteoblast has walled itself in, and now we call it an osteocyte. And so this is, the osteocyte is maintaining the bone tissue. It's just maintaining. And then the osteoclasts, these are kind of interesting cells because they form from embryonically, they form from multiple cells and then they fuse together. And what happens is you get this multinucleated type of cell with this ruffled border. And that's literally eating away the bone. Now that doesn't sound like it would be very healthy, right? But remember I told you that our bones store calcium, lipids. How are we going to get that out of the bone? So this is very important. Osteoclast activity, very, very important because we need to release that calcium from our bones for our effective heart function and a lot of other functions. So anyway, so these 4 cells, okay, now I'm going to show you this really great video on bone tissue. Oh, now if I can do this without, let's see.
The human skeleton gives the body its shape and provides physical support for the systems contained within. It also forms part of the musculoskeletal system that enables us to move. The structure of bone is optimized so that it is strong but relatively lightweight. The interior of bone is composed of bone marrow. It is surrounded by two major types of bone tissue: cortical bone, or the hard outer shell of bone, and trabecular bone, the spongy-looking center. The amount of each type of tissue in bone is dependent on the function of that bone. The basic unit of cortical or compact bone is the osteon. It is composed of successive concentric lamellae. This structure contributes to bone strength by resisting bending. Cells called osteocytes are distributed within the concentric lamellae. Osteocytes form a complex network that is thought to be important in maintaining the viability and structural integrity of bone.
So those are osteocytes that you just saw.
At the center of the osteon is the Haversian canal. These canals contain blood vessels and nerves. The blood vessels within bone facilitate the exchange between osteocytes and the blood. Trabecular bone is present in the interior of some bones and resists compression. Osteocytes are also contained within its structure and again play an important role in sensing local changes in strength. Trabeculae are covered in a layer of flattened lining cells that are thought to be involved in the dynamic process by which bone is formed and broken down. Bone marrow is found within the interior of bones. The surrounding trabeculae and vascular network provide structural support, nutrition, and a waste removal system for the heterogeneous group of cells found within this space.
So these are other cells, like white blood cells, etc.
The process by which the cellular components of blood are formed.
So, and then I want to show you another one. And I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm not being allowed to. Oh, here we go. Let me see.
Bone is a dynamic tissue that is continually being built, broken down, and rebuilt in a process called bone remodeling. Bone tissue is broken down and resolved by multinucleated. The skeleton changes across the human lifespan. This is characterized by bone formation and growth throughout childhood.
I knew that was going to happen. Okay, let me try it again. Okay, now let me
The skeleton changes across the human lifespan. This is characterized predominantly by bone formation and growth throughout childhood, followed by a gradual loss of bone density that begins in early adulthood that can accelerate significantly in older adults. The density of bone is modulated by a group of cells including osteoclasts, which are multinucleated cells that resorb bone, and osteoblasts, which refill the resorption cavities created by osteoclasts. Osteoclasts anchor themselves to the surface of bone. This creates a microenvironment underneath the cell, which is referred to as the sealed zone. Within this zone, the osteoclasts create an acidic environment that dissolves the bone's mineral content. Once the mineral content of the bone has been dissolved, enzymes released from osteoclasts remove the remaining collagenous bone matrix to complete the process of resorption. Following resorption, osteoblasts move into the resorption space and start to produce and deposit organic matrix called osteoid. Osteoid, a substance made predominantly of collagen, forms a scaffold in which minerals including calcium and phosphate begin to crystallize. Some active osteoblasts become trapped within the matrix they secrete and thereby become osteocytes. Other osteoblasts will undergo apoptosis or will revert back to lining cells which cover the surface of bone. This cycle of bone resorption and formation is referred to as remodeling. There is also a process where bone formation by osteoblasts occur without prior bone resorption by osteoclasts. This results in an increase in bone mass and is referred to as bone modeling. Bone modeling promotes the growth of bones and is important for maintaining bone strength. Remodeling also plays an important role during bone growth by optimizing the growing structure. After the age of 30, most people experience a gradual loss in bone mass due to a relative decrease in the activity of osteoblasts compared with osteoclasts. However, there are many factors that impact the process of bone remodeling and influence the degree of bone loss we experience as we age. For example, medications such as glucocorticoids, which can promote osteoclast activity and also reduce bone formation. Proper nutrition and physical activity can help strengthen bone. It is also believed that osteocytes form a complex network in bone that can sense any increased workload on the bone and respond by triggering the differentiation and activity of osteoblasts to increase bone density. Conversely, when bone experiences reduced loading conditions, such as during long-term bed rest, resorption and remodeling increase to eliminate underloaded bone. Loss of bone mass reduces its strength and increases the risk of fracture. This highlights the importance of staying active, maintaining good nutrition throughout life, and being aware of personal risk factors associated with low bone density.
I think that's enough right there. Okay, so anyone have any questions about that? Let me go back to our slideshow. Does everyone understand?
I have a question. So I get that you consume something high in fat, it leads to acidosis, and that leaches calcium?
Oh, now that's where getting way too physiological for me. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
You know,
I
I mean.
never felt like high fat is good for your bones.
Well, not high fat. I mean, fat is good for your bone. Fat's good for your body. I mean, you need to have a certain amount of fat. I mean, you just need healthy fats. I mean, you know, I just feel like, you know, so many people, our media makes us feel like, you know, fat is bad. And it isn't bad at all. It's good for you. But you need to watch how much you have.
Do you know why it's good for your bones, though?
Well, it helps. You know, I don't know exactly why, but it must be involved in somehow in that calcium, in the laying down of that calcium matrix. And we do store fat in our bones. And if you're not storing, if you have so little body fat that you don't even have it in your bones, that's not good.
On that topic, I think we should make a distinction between saturated and trans fats.
Right.
And, you know, monosaturated and all of that.
Yeah.
That's really good fat.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, it's really good for you to have some olive oil every day and an avocado every once in a while, and to, you know, have some really high quality. What's really bad for you is deep fried foods from a fast food restaurant. That is the most horrible fat you could have. But, so fat is not bad, it's not our enemy. In fact, when we go on to study the digestive system, you'll see that, you know, we have some unique adaptations to be able to metabolize fat. So I want to get sidetracked on fat, except that I do like to point out, because I have friends my age who have osteoporosis now from bad dieting. And once you've got that, you know, you're kind of screwed. I mean, you can fix it. There's things they can do, but you know, you're just headed for trouble. And women, we have, you know, kind of an extra relationship there. So you guys are fine now, but you know, when you get to be in your 40s and 50s, you know, you're going to need to start. You know, this will become very, very important to you. Any other questions about that? What about those 4 cells? So do you understand that process of remodeling? So they talked, she talked about these specific 4 cells. Everyone understand that? So these osteoblasts then kind of go back to being that lining cell, and that would then become the osteoblast. So we have this, these cells' ability to, what I'm going to say, the cells have the ability to change. Our bones are dynamic. I mean, that's the main, the take-home message here. Even bed rest, you will have loss of bone. You know, special activity, lots of weightlifting, you'll have increased bone. So our body's going to always respond to this need. We have a lot of nerves in our bones. So I'm going to talk about each of these histologically, but I kind of feel like we really need to see a picture. But she did talk about the osteons and the central canal. Is the central canal, this Haversian canal, is the, you know, I told my students this. Did I tell you guys about the change in language of anatomy over the past 15 years? Okay, so in 1999, you should know this because you're kind of still in the middle of it. In 1999, the World Anatomical Society, I don't know which one, but kind of worldwide, or at least in the United States, in the United States wide, decided to use a different language for anatomy called Anatomica Terminologica, which means anatomy that is based on the terminology of the bone or of the structure. Before that, it was called Anatomica Nomica, which was based upon people's names, like Haversian Canal. That's named after an individual. And while, you know, it's kind of sad to see some of these, you can only imagine these early anatomists. Can you imagine, instead of you being students, you would be other scholars, and I would be up here, and I would be trying to explain to you about bone biology, and we'd be trying to agree what the title of any of these are going to be called, these names are going to be called. And you can only imagine this went on for, you know, a long time. So a Haversian canal is the same thing as the central canal. Like just the Volkmann canal is these canals that are going sideways. So the Haversian, or the central canal, are the canals that are going longitudinally. And the Volkmann, or perforating canals, are the canals for blood that are going horizontal. We call them perforating canals now. And then concentric lamellae is just, each one of these little dots is an osteocyte. And as the osteocytes lay down this calcium matrix, it's kind of laid down in sheets. And then there are little what are called canaliculi, canaliculi is the easier way to say it, canaliculi. I don't know, that's a really hard word to say, canaliculi. And those little canals are, you remember the osteocyte, the picture you saw, those little tendricles? So those are actually protruding through these little canals, and so that the osteons are connected to each other. And so those are the caniculi. And then this interstitial laminae, so as the lamellae are laid, as the osteons are laid down, they're always replacing old ones, right, that are being broken down. And so what you see, the broken down ones that are being replaced are what is interstitial. So whenever you look at a model, you can see that some of the lamellae are no longer perfectly formed. And then the circumferential lamellae is this lamellae that is on the outside in the compact bone. So let me show you a picture. And this is sort of like what you saw in the video. So you can see the osteon, and that would be one of these. This is set up in the lab with microscope slides of all bone formation. We'll go look at that. So you can see the osteon. This would be a perforating canal. This would be a Haverden canal or a central canal, perforating canal. Some books might still refer to it as Volksman, you know, the River Volksman Canal. Anyway, so the Volksman's Canal here. And then each one of these is an osteocyte. And as the osteoblasts laid down, and you saw that's their job, is to build up this tissue, and after a while they'll wall themselves in, and then they become an osteocyte. So then this would be compact bone, and then the trabeculae is here. And it forms the same way, it just doesn't form in these concentric rings. This is very, very strong. And then this is spongy bone. But here you can see the osteocyte and the little cave, for want of a better word, that the osteoblast forms around itself is called the lacuna. We had that when we looked at the hyaline, remember the little lacunae? And I said, pay attention to this, because when we talk about the growth of bone, you'll see that again. You'll see that little lacunae. And so then, these are the little caniculae. The little canals. And you can just kind of, you know, this is living tissue, so it has to get blood, it has to get communication, it has to release waste, it has to get oxygen, it has to get everything it needs. And it's living, and so you can see how it's perfectly set up to get its full nutrition. And then here is the spongy bone. And you can see kind of the same sort of a thing, only you're going to get the osteoblasts are kind of lined up on the outside edge, and here's an osteoclast. Because remember, the spongy bone, equally dynamic, in fact, maybe even more dynamic. And you can see the little osteocytes and the caniculae and the lamellae, but it's not quite as perfectly round in the osteocytes. Any questions so far? And so we'll just talk for a minute about blood supply of a long bone. So we have these periosteal arteries. Just given that name, where are the periosteal arteries? Periosteal arteries. On the outside, right. So